This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
Welcome to Through the Ringer. I'm Tate Frazier, and joining us, as she always does on Friday, it's Nora. Nora's back. How are you, Nora? Good to see you.
Hi, Tate. It's good to see you, too. I'm doing very well.
Yeah, good. And right behind you, I'm just going to break the fourth wall for our listeners. I'm in my new house. I have nothing behind me. I have not been able to move and unpack all my boxes yet, but I did this, and I want you to understand that I'm not trying to copy you with your decor behind you. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to swagger jack you. This will be fixed in the future.
2 months. It's so bad.
I didn't want you to come in and think this is a copycat league, and I'm trying to get like you because I promise this was not on purpose.
I want to take my webcam off my camera and walk you through the rest of my apartment, which has art and photographs and signs of life. I swear. That's what we'll do that next week. Okay, we'll do a House Hunters tour or whatever.
I
promise.
I believe you.
I promise. Real human.
I know I sound like I'm doubting, but I promise I believe you. I know that's true. But for everyone watching right now, it's probably not the most aesthetically pleasing, but we're just going to have fun today.
I'm working on it.
We're working on it. That's all we can do here. We're working on a lot of things. And speaking of working on things, The Ringer is working on power rankings, and they're working a nerve with me, Nora, because every single week I look at these power rankings. I come on the show and all right, let's run through the rankings, and then we'll work through why I have a nerve. So at number 1, we have the 49ers, 4-0, Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan. Things are looking good. Number 2, Buffalo Bills looked incredible against the Dolphins. They get the bump, even though they've already lost, one game to Zach Wilson, but we'll talk about that later. Number 3, Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, that's a conversation that we'll have. The Miami Dolphins at 4. We thought they could be number 1 last week, but they fall. They're at 3-1 now. Like we said, they did drop 70 though. People forget that. And number 5, we have the Dallas Cowboys, which leads me to my first question to you, Nora. Where is Philadelphia? Where are the Eagles? They are undefeated. Are we doubting them? Is that where we are right now? Are they in the doubt phase?
You ask a question. Where are the Philadelphia Eagles? I believe the Philadelphia Eagles are 6th, right?
Yes, right. I believe.
Is this such a crime? These aren't even my rankings. Let's see where let's see where I ended up. Actually,
okay.
I'm gonna pull up my.
I love when the voters show their votes. I mean, I think that's a very fair and balanced approach.
Exactly. Let's see. From Monday afternoon to Riley McAtee. That's right. I did do this. All right. I have the Bills number 1, 49ers number 2, Dolphins number 3, Taylor's Chiefs 4, 5. I have the Cowboys. 6. I had the Ravens.
Oh my
pretty
goodness.
Impressed by that Lamar Jackson performance against a very, very good Cleveland defense. And then 7th. The Philadelphia, every team that makes the playoffs is going to be salivating to pick on those linebackers, Eagles.
Well, I have Philadelphia people in my life, and they send me these rankings, and they terrorize me
problem,
with them.
Tate.
It
That's
is my
not
problem,
me
Nora.
And my rankings that aren't even my rankings.
I'm projecting onto you, and I thought you were going to come through here. You were going to read me your rankings and have the Eagles top 5, and I'm going to say, "See, I'm talking to Nora, and she gets it. She's got them number 4, or whatever it may be." Instead, you slap me with the 7. I don't even know what to do with that, but I do want to say this. Let's talk about the Ravens, because you did have them 6. The Ravens are another team outside of Philadelphia, and they're terrorizing. The Ravens, they're not bothering anybody, and they're a really good football team, and I think they could be in the conversation to be at number 5, number 4. What have you liked from the Ravens so far this year?
I mean, like everything that doesn't have to do with it being the 19th year in a row, it feels like, where they've been just absolutely decimated by major injuries, but they are getting healthier. And what I love is how much space there is in this offense. Lamar Jackson in space is like the coolest thing to watch on a football field. And the proof of concept for the Todd Monken offense was that it was going to do that. And I think they have that. I think the fact that they were able to do that against a Cleveland defense last week, that was definitely the biggest test defensively that they've had, was really, really impressive. They're still only getting healthier. I guess I shouldn't say that. I should knock on wood if I'm going to say that. But I think I think Lamar is going to be an MVP candidate. The only reason I wouldn't say favorite is just because of how well Josh Allen has been playing. The fact that Patrick Mahomes still lives and breathes, and some of the stuff that has to do with how dominant Miami can be. It's just about somebody else might be equally or more impressive, but it's hard to find someone playing significantly better quarterback than he is. And that offense as a whole has really impressed me so far.
And how much things can change in a year, right? Last year, there's the whole Lamar, will he get paid? There was a lot of conversations about how he's handling his own, representation. And then he gets his contract, and all of a sudden he gets an offensive coordinator that kind of tries to cater towards his skill set. And we look up, and you're right, he looks like MVP Lamar Jackson. Who would have thought when you get treated like you expect to be treated, things happen, pretty well in the football field.
It is such a funny sliding doors moment, because some of the teams that we're having discussions about now, where the quarterbacking isn't going so well, were the teams where maybe they had an opportunity to make a bigger push to try to get him in the building than, say, the New England Patriots did or the Atlanta Falcons did. And now all of a sudden we're a month into the season and talking about real deficiencies in someone like Mac Jones and someone like Desmond Ridder, and watching Lamar play the type of football that he's playing. It remains bonkers to me that guy was just out there and nobody tried to do something.
They were dangling him, Nora, and they kept putting out stories last year. Like,
yes, you're right.
Yeah, they were just like, no team wants him. If he doesn't want to accept like a lower contract, he won't have anywhere to play and be a starter. And now you watch him and you're like, how is this even a conversation point? And it's crazy, like I said, how things can change in a year for Lamar Jackson. So we're on board. I think Baltimore has a case. Philadelphia, they're 7th right now in my power rankings too. I just updated my power rankings. I put the Ravens ahead of them. No, I'm just kidding. But let's talk about the biggest game of the week. That's the number 5 team. We have the Cowboys taking on the 49ers, the number 1 team. So we got a top 5 matchup. That is the game of the weekend. What is the most important facet in your mind for this game this weekend, Cowboys-Niners?
I mean, I just think it's going to be watching the Cowboys defense try to shut down what San Francisco has going on right now. I mean, Brock Purdy had 1 incompletion last week. And Stephen Ruiz and I got in an argument on our podcast today where Stephen just doesn't believe that Brock is doing anything whatsoever. He's like, you or I could do that. We could get back there. I give the Brock star a little bit more credit than that. I do think that his mobility and some of the ways in which he's a slightly better downfield thrower than, say, Jimmy Garoppolo was in that offense are making a difference for them. But you're seeing stuff from that offense right now, like Purdy's throwing way downfield into double coverage. The ball doesn't have anywhere near what it needs to have on it. It's like 10 yards short. And then Brandon Ayuk is just like, oh yeah, cool. I'm going to make a play on this.
Yeah,
and it's fine. It's just fine. No one has gotten in their way so far this season, but I do think that this Cowboys defense is one of the best in the league. And whether they can slow them down is going to be really, really interesting.
And it always feels like the Niners are the team that the Cowboys, they win 14 games in the regular season. They get to the playoffs. They play, a Niners team that won 10 or 11 games, and then the Cowboys lose, and then their fans. Right, exactly. So it feels like if there's ever a time for the Cowboys to maybe rewrite that, it could be with that defense this weekend going up against the number one team in the NFL by the experts here. So, I mean, it could be an opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys, but everything in my gut and my head says this is exactly what Kyle Shanahan and the Niners kind of feast on and have feasted on in the past with this team in general. So a healthy Brock Purdy is good news. And like you said, I mean, Steven Ruiz might not believe that Brock's doing much, but he's doing enough, and he's at least adding another dynamic to this offense, which is fascinating. Quickly, can we just talk about Christian McCaffrey? How fun is it to see him playing at this high of a level? 4 touchdowns last weekend.
It was amazing. I mean, he's just so electric. We were playing a hypothetical game on the show we recorded earlier about which offense would be better equipped to just keep rolling without the superstar, Miami without Tyreek Hill, or the 49ers without McCaffrey. I said losing Tyreek would hurt the Dolphins more by a hair, but it is really that close. This guy's a running back. Like, it's just not supposed to happen this way. And the way that he is able to just create explosives for them. I mean, they're, I think, 6th in the league in yards after the catch per play. So far, he's stayed healthy, and as long as he's healthy, he's just such a difference maker for them.
Yeah, he's been great so far, and as a Panthers fan, I am not enjoying it. I'm not having fun watching it, but I do respect how great he's playing right now. Shout out to CMC. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Nora about the Patriots hitting quote unquote rock bottom. Welcome back to Through the Ringer. I am still here with Nora. And Nora, I'm going to talk about a story that you recently just wrote for theringer.com. And of course, it was about Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And you put it together, pieced it together that maybe right now the Patriots are hitting quote unquote rock bottom. What does rock bottom look like for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots?
Well, it's kind of this thing that I thought was unthinkable at the beginning of the year, which was that you could take Matt Patricia and Joe Judge coaching the offense out of the equation, and it might get worse. And I feel a little tongue in cheek when I say that, because I think there are some elements of the play calling and how Bill O'Brien has designed this year's Patriots offense that do make sense, that have had some promising results, and they have played against very quality opponents, including the 7th ranked Philadelphia Eagles by the Ringer NFL Power Rankings, by the way, or 6th ranked, 7th ranked by me. Sorry, just wanted to put it there. But this is a year when they have to make a choice on Mac Jones. They're going to have to decide whether or not to pick up his 5th-year option after the season ends. And if this season were going well in New England, I think it would have something to do with them feeling like that was trending toward yes. And it's very much not. And that's a complicated thing to figure out what it means for them going forward, because Mac is not a difference maker quarterback, but they did draft him. And I think it's hard to look at this offense right now with just the lack of explosion, the lack of playmakers with separation ability, the weakness on the offensive line, the injury concerns on the offensive line, some of which are, injuries happen and that's random, but some of which I think do come down to you go through the offseason and have a clear need at right tackle and go, yeah, let's slap $5 million out there for Riley Reif and just cross our fingers. And this, of course, this is what's going to happen. So I think they have so many questions about whether or not the pieces are there that you can try to build into a competitive team, a playoff contender, or whether it's just time to tear it all down, which I think are complicated by the fact that, one, Robert Kraft really wants to make the playoffs, really likes to say that he wants to make the playoffs. And as long as you have Bill Belichick there, it sort of feels like the team should be good. Like it feels like they can't possibly, of course they're going to be at least competitive. Like they're going to be in the wild card race. They're it's the Patriots. They've got a really talented defense and they'll be smarter than everybody and they'll figure it out. And that's just not happening. And I think there's an element of hubris that comes from having had all of that success and thinking that you can continue to win without loading up around a quarterback who's not Tom Brady and who's not going to be able to bring people along and make everybody around him better in the way that Tom Brady was. So it's a tough situation. They are, by a lot of metrics, among the very worst offenses in the league. Our buddy Warren Sharp was posting about how they have the highest percentage of drives that end in a punt or a turnover. It's 71%. So 71% of their drives are either ending in a punt or a turnover, which is the worst in football. That's just like atrocious stuff.
Yeah, right. It's kind of fascinating though, because like the way that it is built is so similar to what we've seen with Bill Belichick. You have a really good defense, and the idea is that you get a competent quarterback, and emphasis on competent, and we don't play from behind. We play on script. Our defense takes care of business, and we win football games. But Mac Jones is making rookie mistakes in year 3, and you can't play, ahead of the chains. You can't play, complimentary football. Yeah. And for Bill Belichick, I think that's probably why he's so frustrated, because he's like, if I just had you do what is scripted, our defense can win us these football games. But instead, we're turning the ball over, and instead, we're getting
yes
behind.
And no, though,
right.
And like this is what's tough about it is that if he would, I think they would be in a much better position if Mac were able right now to stay on script. If he were playing with a little bit more confidence. I mean, I think that's the reason he got benched in that game, was because when he threw that second interception, it was just like, that's a pass that you make when you are just dejected and don't think that are just checked out of the game. And to me, it looked like, and I'm doing some armchair psychology here, obviously, but I think Bill looked at that pass and went like, this guy has absolutely no interest in being in this football game right now, and he's got to get out of there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a tough, like, I don't think you can just say, Mac's got to stop turning the ball over. Mac's got to stop putting them down by a couple scores, because they just don't. They don't have the skill position guys. They don't have anybody who's offering some real separation ability. They're near the bottom of the league in receiver separation, and some of that is a really self-inflicted wound, because you're watching, Jacoby Myers is out there in Las Vegas, not setting the world on fire, but he's giving the Raiders a lot more than the Patriots are getting out of Juju Smith-Schuster, who they're paying basically what Jacoby got on the free agent market. That will never make any sense to me, the fact that they let that guy go. Developing receivers has been like an impossible task for this team, and they kind of found one. And he's not Randy Moss, but he's pretty good. And they just let him go. Mm-hmm. And it got played as a cost thing. But he's making barely a penny more than Juju is, and he'd be a much more useful player. And then there's stuff like they find Demario Douglas, this sort of undrafted, diamond in the rough is maybe a little bit strong, but he's explosive. He's got real athletic ability. He's got real ability to separate. And he fumbles the ball early in the season. And he's sort of been, they just haven't leaned on him. They haven't leaned on him in critical situations. They haven't leaned on him on third downs. when every defense in the league is just saying, we're going to load up front and dare Mac Jones and this offense to beat us to the perimeter, try to beat us deep. And we can man up on these guys because they're not going to beat it. And they're being so far proven correct in that assessment. And so to me, there are a number of things that are going on. And one of them is that the quarterback is just not playing well. But I do, like, if I have to plant my flag on one thing, it is just that there are personnel deficiencies all over this roster, particularly on the offense. And a quarterback significantly better than Mac Jones could make more of it than Mac is making. But there are a short list of quarterbacks in the NFL who would make this Patriots offense look genuinely scary.
And similarly, we have Bill Belichick. Obviously, we're trying to figure out who's going to, get the finger pointing in that situation. Belichick's getting some of it. Like you said, Bill O'Brien's getting some of it. Mac Jones, everyone's trying to figure it out. But there's also Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and they have a similar situation. It feels like the fan base has all said, blame Canada, right? That they are pointing at Matt Canada. They're saying he's the problem. But Mike Tomlin is trying to, manage that situation. So you have two of the most tenured coaches in football, both of them with kind of similar issues at the same time. What do we make of the Steelers, and what is the long-term outlook for even Mike Tomlin this season, and what happens even with Matt Canada? I mean, who knows? Because it seems like everybody wants his head.
The Canada thing is the strangest story to me right now,
right?
Because his offenses have just not been good. There is an incredibly long sample size showing that this isn't working. And it's a little bit of a different situation, right? Like, we were just talking about Bill Belichick, 6 Super Bowls, like one of the, the all-time storied coaches, figures, not just in football, not just in the NFL, but in like the history of sports. Of course, it's really hard to get to a place where you're like, man, does this guy not have it anymore? We're talking about Matt Canada. Like, what has he done? What is I don't think that Mike Tomlin has lost it. I think Mike Tomlin in the last couple of years has dragged rosters that had no place being there to, above 500 records that I don't think a lot of coaches would be able to get them there. But Matt Canada just has not been a reason why that's happened. It's incredibly predictable. They run around, like, the use of motion. He's got guys running around behind the line of scrimmage, like every play with their head cut off. It has no discernible relationship to the plays that they're trying to run on the field. And then the quarterback is just passing horizontally. Like, they're throwing behind the line of scrimmage or barely at it all the time. And every single thing that I just mentioned has been a long-term problem. It's not just like, oh, he's not gelling with Kenny Pickett or something. It's just like, this offense doesn't work. So it beats me why he's still there. I mean, there was a story a couple weeks ago about Matt Canada maybe taking on more responsibility with Pickett himself. I don't know why you'd want to do that. And then maybe you saw this. There were some tweets that were unearthed earlier this week that seemed like they might have come from a Matt Canada burner account.
Oh my god! Not this again, Nora. I can't do burner. I can't do burner accounts.
Don't you love a burner story? Like a burner.
My goodness.
A burner. Finding a burner is like one of the top things that can happen in sports drama. I think it's just so juicy. Long story short. Probably this was pretty swiftly debunked, but there was an account that was responding to criticisms of Canada's offense with things like, yeah, sure, fire Canada, and then when the next guy can't turn Pickett into Patrick Mahomes, you'll get rid of him too. Stuff that, no rational human would say. And then somebody very smart and very sleuthy did the thing where you try to recover the password and see what the email address that's associated with the account was. And it was like, it's all asterisked, out, but it looked like it was like mc@steelers.com. So for a hot minute, NFL Twitter thought it had found Matt Canada's burner. Then someone pointed out that the Steelers use a different email format. It's like steelers.nfl.com. And it was pretty quickly revealed not to have been Matt Canada's burner account. But here's my question. Here's my conspiracy theory. Someone's trying to frame him.
Okay, yeah, that's what someone's trying to set up Matt Canada, right? This is deep state stuff.
This is a very long-winded answer to your question, but your question was like, is Mike Tomlin kind of losing his touch here, losing his A game because he's hanging on to this guy who's not doing anything for his offense? And I'm not saying that, Mike Tomlin did this. I'm not saying that anyone in particular did this, but maybe some canny and proactive member of the Steelers organization just decided to take matters into their own hands and, fire up the old X, Twitter, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And just try to make some things look a little convenient.
Yeah, what if you said it started with an M? What if it was like MC Trubisky at Steelers.com? You know what I mean? What if Trubisky's out there and he's trying to put out that Matt Canada needs to go because, maybe the new offensive coordinator sees him and says, this guy's got a lot of talent. Maybe I put him out there.
I love it. I think it's brilliant. I would love every NFL story to involve a burner account and Mitch Trubisky. Mitchell.
Yes. The MVP himself. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the games that Nora wants to watch this weekend outside of the Cowboys 49ers. And we'll talk a little Aaron Rodgers, just a little bit. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Through the Ringer. I'm still here with Nora, and we're having fun. We just talked about Mitch Trubisky. We just talked about, another conspiracy. I love when I bring Nora on and we just start talking about random NFL conspiracies. It's always fun. Now let's talk about some matchups, because this week everyone's talking about Cowboys 49ers. Like I said, the 5th team in the power rankings playing the 1st team in the power rankings. We get that. But is there another game that you have on the schedule that you have circled, Nora, this weekend that you're excited about?
I think Sunday morning, across the pond, Bills, Jags in London will be really fun.
Right.
The Jags have been underwhelming, but they are in kind of this do or die moment, and they love London, right? They love an international game. No one loves an international game more than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so I hope that Trevor Lawrence will sort of take on the mantle of facing Josh Allen coming off a super impressive performance. And I'm hoping that that's a shootout. I'm hoping that we maybe see a little bit more fight, a little bit more situational soundness from the Jacksonville offense than we've seen thus far. I do think that I have some concerns about their offensive line holding up against Buffalo's defensive line. I think that group has been super impressive, and they've got Von Miller coming back. But I think that should be a really fun game. And I always love I like getting up in the morning and having my coffee, sitting on the couch. And you get this on the West Coast, this
right.
morning football experience pretty regularly. But for me, it's special. And so to have it be a good game, I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, for me, it's 6:30 in the morning. So like I wake up and it's about the third quarter and you realize if it's a game or not. You know what I mean? Am I going to tune in for the second half of this game? But yeah, I'm excited for that one. Also, the Jaguars, I think we should put it out there. The Jaguars should always be the home team in London. They are London's team. I do not like that the Bills are the home team with Jacksonville. Plus, Jacksonville's already been over there, so they already have the advantage. They basically are at home. So let's just flip that if I'm the NFL. I want the Jags to always be at home in London. I like that game.
Like
also, we got Ravens Steelers as well, which is always a fun rivalry game. And we'll see Matt Canada and who knows, maybe even Mitchell Trubisky in that game. So that'll be a good one this weekend. Eagles Rams should be fun out here in Los Angeles. Those Philadelphia fans that I mentioned to you that have been terrorizing me, they will be terrorizing people in SoFi this weekend. So that'll be a fun game to watch. So we got some good football. And speaking of good football, that's what the Jets are hoping that they get at some point. Aaron Rodgers is in the headlines again, Nora, and I have to ask you about it. He says he is, quote unquote, attacking his rehab. Medical professionals have been absolutely astounded by what he's been able to do so far. They've never seen anything like it. He is also working out.
Doctors hate this one trick.
Yeah. He's like basically trying to stick it to the
vibe right now.
He's sticking it to the doctors. He said, "You give me timelines, I give you results." And here we are. So, what are your thoughts on just like the coverage of Aaron Rodgers and just him talking about his rehab? Will we see him play again?
I think probably not, because I think that there is an outside chance that Aaron Rodgers can complete his rehab in a fast enough time frame to be able to come back at the end of this season or for a playoff run. And I also think that I struggle to believe that this iteration of the Jets can keep themselves in contention long enough to even find out. I think Aaron Rodgers has just like finessed the heck out of this situation. He's hanging out in Malibu. He gets to go on Pat McAfee every week and talk about how he's attacking his rehab. No one's ever rehabbed harder. No one's done more for their Achilles than Aaron Rodgers. And I'm sorry, we're never going to find out because Zach Wilson looked better on a football field against the Chiefs than I've ever seen him look before. I think he's got a pretty solid chance to have another good game against a Broncos defense that just made the Bears offense look pretty competent. So I got to believe they can do it for the Jets. I do not believe that this offense is going to turn it around, that this Jets team is going to turn it around. I don't see it happening and that's whether it's Wilson or if Trevor Siemian takes over or something like that. But when we're in December, I have a hard time thinking that they will be even in a place where it would make sense for Rodgers to come back. So that coupled with the fact that he and his 40-year-old Achilles are trying to make some history here doesn't have me the most confident.
Yeah, it does feel like he is trying to write this narrative, this story, that this epic comeback story. And I'm not sure that Zach Wilson is Brock Osweiler, right? Like Brock Osweiler got the Broncos in position for Peyton to come in for the final kill, right? I mean, that was pretty much what that season was. This defense is incredible. We can at least get us there into the playoffs, and then we'll let Peyton come in, manage the game, and let our defense, Von Miller, win the game for us. I'm not sure that the Jets are that good defensively. I'm also not sure Zach Wilson can get them even to that point. But that's why I think it's kind of the perfect setup for Rodgers, because he can say he is ready to play, but they're just not in the playoffs, right? I mean, that's why it's such a funny, like you said, I mean, it's such a funny way to set this whole thing up. Cause like, how can you play when you're not in the playoffs? I mean, that is the real question that everybody is trying to answer. Nora, we love having you on the show. Appreciate you joining as always. We'll see you next week. We'll have more stories for you. We'll have you debunk some more stuff in the NFL. Where can we find all your amazing work for anyone that is not reading theringer.com?
The Ringer NFL show feed, Dual Threat with Stephen Ruiz twice a week, and every single album.
I love it. Always fun, Nora. Appreciate you joining. Coming up right now, we're going to have our fantasy football expert, Danny Heifetz, join the show. We'll see you in a few. Welcome back to Through the Ringer, and joining us now, he is one of my favorites here at the Ringer. We love his energy always. He is the great Danny Heifetz from the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. Danny, what's going on, man?
Nothing, man. How you doing, dude?
I'm good. I have a lot of questions for you. This is the time of the year where, we've all done our fantasy football drafts. We all got excited about our teams, right? We all said, this is our year. We're going to win the championship. And then injuries happen. Guys hold out. Guys don't play. All sorts of conversations. And then you find new names that you don't know before. So let's start with some sneaky additions. Are there some names this week in week 5 that you think would be some good pickups if you need someone in the flex or you need someone to kind of just bolster your team a little bit after some early season struggles?
Yeah, because the bye week started this week in week 5, so waivers have already gone through. So if you're looking at your lineup and you're like, oh my God, I just absolutely need a desperate one. And again, it's not going to be pretty, right? Beggars can't be choosers. Kenneth Gainwell for the Eagles is someone that might be out there. It's him and DeAndre Swift, but he still gets a lot of goal line work for the Eagles. It's kind of a desperation prayer. I also think if you want someone that you kind of want to stash ahead of the week, that's someone that basically might be a big waiver pickup after the games and you have an extra bench spot. If you have 2 defenses, just cut one of them. Ronnie Rivers for the Rams. Sean McVay had like a cartoonish workload for Kyren Williams, and they traded Cam Akers away to Minnesota. And they're kind of acting with their heart, not their head. The Rams, the plan is incredible. They don't really have anyone on their roster that's played running back other than Kyren Williams. So Ronnie Rivers, if anything happens to Kyren Williams, Ronnie Rivers would be the only guy on the team who could be capable of carrying the football. So that's a guy, and Kyren Williams already has a bruised hip. And spoiler, if an NFL player is a questionable with a bruise, their bruises don't look like our bruises, Tate. It's a big different bruise. So if he's on the injury report with the bruise, something's up with his hip. So Ronnie Rivers is kind of like a cheeky little addition, if anything else, if that hip gets any worse.
Yeah, I like Ronnie Rivers is a great one. And I think anyone that plays for Sean McVay is a good pickup in fantasy football at this point. That's what we're learning. So I want to ask you about a very specific guy, and he is sort of the belle of the ball, the doll of, anyone out there that's been watching football early this season. He is Puka Nacua, of course. And what do we think about Puka's impact so far? Will it sustain? And what happens when Cooper Kupp comes back into the fold?
So I'll take those one at a time. First of all, I just want to let you know, last year I adopted a cat with my girlfriend, and what everyone says about adoptions are true. Like when you adopt an animal, you bring an animal in your home, the relationship is so much deeper. It's like adopt, don't shop. It's just a deeper thing. And when you add a guy off of waivers like Puka Nacua, the relationship is deeper, honestly, than someone. You're like, I just found this guy, wanted to give him a home. And then you're like, oh my God, he's the best receiver in football. And like you added him, he's yours. And now Puka Nacua, top 3 in basic targets, catches, yards, first downs. It's Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua in every single category. It's unbelievable. So what a crazy start.
I love it so much.
But to tell you the truth, man, look, is he going to keep being Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson when Cooper Kupp comes back? Probably not. But I'm not worried about the role because he's not the Cooper Kupp guy. He's Robert Woods. He's a better, younger, sharper kind of version of Robert Woods, where he can do everything. He can block, he can crack down, he can play from anywhere. He's kind of the Rams that first year under McVay had 3 receivers on the field for every play, but they were using Robert Woods like, hey, you want to be a fullback here, you want to do a tight end's job here, they could kind of do everything. And Puka Nacua is kind of that role. So he's not going anywhere just because Cooper Kupp's coming back.
Yeah. If anything, we have a conversation, right? I'm hoping maybe in a couple of weeks, Danny, I have you back on and I ask you, is that the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp? Like we can have some fun conversations with that because I think everybody else would probably look to the Miami Dolphins at that, when we have that conversation. But why not throw Puka and Cooper Kupp in the mix? I like that. That gets me to my next question for you. Who's the fantasy MVP so far this season, right? Like you said, we got bye week coming up right now. We got some good options. Christian McCaffrey seems to be the one that everyone kind of goes to. Is he already the MVP or is there someone else on your mind?
So Christian McCaffrey, look, he's the number 1 player, right? It's hard not to pick Christian McCaffrey. I will say this. If you want to be like, well, he's a first rounder. So if you're talking about value, I won't argue against Christian McCaffrey. I mean, since he became a 49er, he's got 20 touchdowns in 18 games, if you include the playoffs. It's pretty good. 118 first downs in 18 games as a Niner. Pretty good by me. But if you want to go outside the first round, I think Devon Achane now for the Dolphins has been great. But realistically, he didn't do anything in the first 2 weeks. No one had him in your lineup in week 3. So he had one good game. He can't be a fantasy MVP if he's played in your lineup one time. Raheem Mostert, similar, like didn't play for you in week 1, week 4 was whatever. I would actually pick, and this is a crazy thing to say, the Cowboys defense. Because you know why? The Cowboys defense has 80 fantasy points this year. Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill are tied with like 86. So think about that. If you're the Cowboys defense, you've basically been playing Justin Jefferson at your defense for the entire season. That's crazy. How do you beat that?
Yeah, and it's honestly like been at first, like the first 2 weeks, I felt like we were talking about Micah Parsons, right, being a potential MVP candidate. That's how good that Cowboys defense is. I like that answer. You kind of mentioned it. I wanted to ask you, this is separate of fantasy. This is real life. What are our thoughts on the fact that we went from A-Chain to A-Chan? Does that hurt some of his value in our minds a little bit? Because A-Chain was such a great name. It sounded good. Move the chains, A-Chain first down, right? All the conversations. Is A-Chan, does it rub you the wrong way a little bit? Like, I don't like this. I don't like the name change. It's very Duke. I've seen this before.
I totally agree, because you're right. Like I was hoping he'd come to the Giants or the Jets, and we could call him the A-Train, right? And I thought that would be incredible. But now A-Chan, it's a little downstream of 4chan, and I'm like, damn, man, you're going to lean into that? Like, that's something I'll probably lean away from. And now, I don't know. I don't want to. It's a world that I wouldn't have dove into.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. But talking about that team, I mean, the Dolphins offense, right? I mean, we saw them get, I guess they got a reality check a little bit playing against Buffalo. They've had some struggles with Buffalo. It's a divisional game, so we know how that goes. But I'm going to ask you about that running back room. Who is the better Dolphins running back right now in fantasy if you had to choose a guy to kind of line up with? Is it A-Chan?
I think I'd get fired if I didn't pick the guy averaging 12 yards a carry. I don't know, but I think what's crazy is that Mostert's they're different players. Mostert's fast, but Mostert's literally a decade older. It's like 31 years old versus 21. I mean, this is sneaky, but the oldest 3 running backs in the NFL that actually get work are like Latavius Murray, and then it's like Raheem Mostert. He's 31. There's not many 31-year-old running backs left. So I just by default I'm going to pick the guy that has already had a 200-yard game as a rookie. I think A-Chan, I think the bigger picture is that the first answer I would have gave you is Devon A-Chan the name's going to take me forever to say, but someone at 180-ish pounds in the NFL is going to be like but the reality of what we're seeing, Tate, is that size doesn't matter as much. Weight used to be your fate in the NFL. We got guys like Tank Dell for the Texans, Devontae Smith, Devon A-Chan. It's like small guys in the league now that hitting's gone. We're seeing them getting given opportunities and run with it. And it's like small guys can play now. So I think it's A-Chan, because the idea that he's small, it's like he turned the first 60 yards of the field into the goal line.
Yeah, and it's good news if you're a Panthers fan, right? Like you said, small guys can actually play now. So Bryce Young, he has a chance. That is, I'm going to take that as a promising comment there from Danny Heifetz. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Cowboys and the 49ers game this weekend, and Kyle Pitts. Oh, man, the Kyle Pitts conversation. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Through the Ringer. I am still here with Danny Heifetz, and I'm still peppering him with questions about fantasy football because that is what he is an expert on, and just football in general, right, Danny? So we're excited to talk about probably the best game this weekend. We got the Cowboys, 49ers, and I want to talk about some of the guys in this game that we should sit or we should play. Let's start with the Cowboys side of things. Who should we be focusing in on this week to actually play outside of that, electric Cowboys defense that you mentioned earlier?
I mean, you got to, again, Christian McCaffrey's got 20 touchdowns in 18 games as a Niner. It's like, I don't care who they're playing. You got to play him, obviously. Tony Pollard, you still have to play. I mean, McCaffrey and Pollard actually have the most touches in the NFL this year. And then all the receivers, you can't be afraid of the defenses. You have to, CeeDee Lamb is incredible. Debo is Debo. We'll see what happens with him in this rib injury. Brandon Ayuk, I actually think, is making the leap. I think Brandon Ayuk, by the end of the season, is going to be a top 10 receiver. Like, real life, I think he's going to join that conversation. He's a 9.5 out of 10 athlete that is approaching guys like CeeDee Lamb in terms of technique. So that's incredible. And then even guys like George Kittle, but also like Jake Ferguson, the tight end for the Cowboys, actually is, I think, top 2 in red zone or end zone targets among all tight ends. So I would actually play all these guys and just kind of enjoy Sunday Night Football, honestly.
Yeah, it's kind of a treat, right? When you have a game like this, you have a primetime matchup. Just play the guys that you have in this game, and it adds even more stakes to it. So I think that's a good move. One little controversial piece I wanted to talk. I guess is maybe not controversial, but Austin Eckler. I guess is the Austin Eckler mystery. I felt like last week going into the game, right? It was we saw him in practice. There was all this optimism. Austin, he's a top 5 pick for a lot of people in their fantasy drafts, and then the Chargers put out right before the game inactive Austin Eckler. Where do we stand with him right now? And how frustrating is that for fantasy players in general with that whole kind of mystery that goes into the whole injury and health of players going into Sunday?
Yeah, I don't know. If you let fantasy football people run the world, then we would just get rid of HIPAA, right? They would just let everyone just give us all their medical records. No, I think that you saw Eckler have the same thing as Deshaun Watson with the Browns last week, where there was an injury, and they're like, well, the bye is next week, so what if we just give him the extra week to rest? I think Eckler will come back, but I don't know. Given the contract situation with Eckler, I think that Eckler is someone who's always prioritized. He will take less snaps in a given game to prioritize the whole season. And I think that you're going to see from Austin Eckler more of a prioritization on his long-term health entering free agency than even in a normal year. And then I think for the Chargers, they're like, you know what? We should get through the bye with him healthy anyway. So I think especially with high ankle sprain like that, the 2 weeks makes a big difference.
Yeah, but fantasy owners like myself that have Austin Eckler, we are upset. We're waving our fists at the air right now.
We need
another
warranty.
Group of people. Yeah, right. I need some sort of penance back. We'll figure that out. But another conversation, a lot of people have tried to buy into the Kyle Pitts situation here in Atlanta. I feel like he is also someone that is miraculously on every single fantasy board going into the season. And then you look at the production and it's really not one-to-one. After week one, I remember Arthur Smith, Falcons coach, he said, Kyle Pitts is just happy we won the game. I think the rational follow-up would be, well, what happens when you lose the game? They have been losing some games, the Falcons. And what is the Kyle Pitts situation? And should we believe that there is a chance that he kind of evolves into who we hope he can be?
Kyle Pitts is just like an Instagram thirst trap, man. Like you just kind of scroll past, you're like, oh, that looks good. And then you know what? You should have just stayed away. And you know what? Just bonk, horny police. But I think that where things are right now, I think the reality is that Kyle Pitts tore his MCL to end last season, and I think people are really underrating the impact on his current health this season. I think that we all just kind of assumed he'd be healthy, and that's not really the case, number one. Number two, obviously the Falcons offense isn't using him like you'd expect them to use a tight end / wide receiver with the 4th pick in the draft. But I'd say this. I actually think you should trade for Kyle Pitts. And here's why. No one wants him. No one who has Kyle Pitts is happy with him. And here's the thing. This is the Bill Simmons rule of acquire distressed assets. At the end of the day, I didn't like Kyle Pitts when he was a top 70 pick in drafts, but right now we're still talking about the greatest tight end prospect in a generation. Really more than that. He's probably the best tight end prospect ever. And he's still younger than Dalton Kincaid, who was the rookie drafted in the first round of this year's NFL draft. Kyle Pitts is younger than Dalton Kincaid. But here's the thing. You could trade for him for free $99. You could probably send a kicker and someone will be like, yeah, anything to get Kyle Pitts off my roster. So go get him and just have him be your backup tight end and see what happens. Maybe he'll turn it around.
Yeah, right now he's probably a top 15 or top 14 tight end. That's a good conversation to put it in Bill Simmons context.
He's top 28, top 30. He's the number 2 tight end on the Falcons in fantasy points this year.
There you go. Well, Kyle Pitts, let's figure it out because when you're the 4th pick, everybody wants to see you play football. I don't know if it's the Falcons. I don't know if it's Kyle Pitts, but somebody's got to point the finger and someone's got to figure it out ASAP because he's also on my fantasy football team. If you're not picking up on this, Danny Heifetz, I'm using you as a soundboard right now to figure out what the hell is going on with these guys. I want to ask about your New York Giants. You've been a guy last year. You saw them win in the playoffs. You saw Daboll win Coach of the Year. A lot of good vibes. Danny Dimes gets his contract. Unfortunately, Saquon's injured right now. How do we kind of handicap the Giants players when it comes to fantasy football right now? Like, do we play these guys? Do we stay away? Where do we stand right now with your Giants?
I thought we were friends, Tate. You gonna bring this up? Oh my God.
We are. They sent this to me. I didn't want to ask this, Danny.
So I can give you a fantasy take, and if you want it, I can give you my real life take. But for fantasy, the short answer
Let's do both.
The fantasy aspect this is the easiest question you've asked, which is you buy them because again, it's Warren Buffett rule of you be fearful when everyone's bold and you be bold when everyone's fearful. And so if everyone in the world just watched Monday Night Football and says the Giants suck and everyone knows Darren Waller is like, wow, I regret taking this guy, well, then maybe scoop up and buy Darren Waller because all these players are priced at rock bottom. People are going to cut Daniel Jones. You can get him on waivers. You can trade for Darren Waller for nothing and get this guy with all this upside. And you know who knows the Giants need to throw the ball Darren Waller? The Giants. They're aware. They're aware of the problem. And so I think this is the same reason we were talking about as a buy low last week, Justin Fields to the Bears. Last season, the first 5 weeks, Justin Fields was the 32nd best quarterback. 32nd. There's 32 teams. Second half of the season, Justin Fields was the top 5 quarterback. It's in life, in football, It's never as good as it feels. It's never as bad as it seems. So I would go get the guys.
He is Danny Heifetz. Danny, where can we find all your amazing work on the Ringer? And appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Ringer Fantasy Football Show, man, wherever you get your pods, but get them on Spotify. And then we're also here on our beloved FanDuel TV here on Wednesdays doing Power Hour. So thank you for having me, man.
Of course. We'll have you back. Thanks so much, Danny.